Hello, welcome to Also Driven. I'm Jim.
And I'm Sean.
He's the sexiest man with 2,500 subscribers on automotive YouTube. So last year we came to Lanzarote and we rented a Dacia Jogger Extreme Special Edition with lots and lots of gadgets on it.
Yes.
And we were a bit about it.
Yeah.
This year it's base model brilliance.
It
We have the
is.
£15,500 Jogger base model. So let's see what it's like in comparison.
So this year's Jogger is a 5-seat version, whereas last year's was the 7-seater. So it'd be really interesting to have a look and a little bit of a comparison of those two features. The other thing is that this is the 2024 model, so it has a little bit more tech on it, and it has all the new Dacia badging. So we still love the really chunky styling of the Jogger. I absolutely love this little step and the black plastic accoutrements all over it. It's great. But this kind of rugged, go anywhere, do everything attitude is kind of slightly mired by the tiny weeny little 1-litre 3-cylinder engine under the bonnet. And hopefully you can hear through my microphone how it kind of thrums away and just sounds harsh most of the time. Jim's been the one driving it, and as you know, it's really chunkily powerful. It's got quite a lot of torque, but it just feels stressed all the time, which just doesn't make it the most relaxing car to drive overall, perhaps.
But the flip side to it, though, is that this car retails out here for about £15,000. In the UK, it's around about £18,000 because we pay through the nose for everything, Brexit bonus. But there is not an awful lot in the market at that price. It's in competition with things like the recently discontinued Fiat 500, which is a 17-year-old design. And this is pretty modern. It can sit 5 people. It has a massive boot and it gets around 40 miles to the gallon.
But even then, there's nothing about it that feels that basic. You know, it's got everything that you could possibly want in a car. It's got really nice air conditioning, it's got cruise control, it's got infotainment with a touch screen, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. It's got a nice feeling interior. I love this fabric on the dash. It just really lifts it and stops it from being a sea of dark grey plastic everywhere. But there's nothing about it, you know, the way you close the doors, the way you touch the controls or the knobs, they all feel fine, they feel lovely. They don't make you feel like you've made really poor life choices and bought one of the cheapest cars for sale in Europe.
Yes, this little badge here, which is right beside the air conditioning recycling thing, so it makes it sound like this would basically give you something to do with the air conditioning, is actually a switch which knocks about 30 horsepower off the engine. And we didn't realize last year on the car that for the majority of the time we had it, that was switched on. So we only had about 70 horsepower. So what's different about this one that we like it more? Well, the first thing is it has a key. The last car had keyless entry. It was a solution looking for a problem. Quite
it
often,
was incredibly annoying, wasn't it?
yeah, one of us would have the key on us and the other person would get out, and then the car would have a fit.
Yeah.
Or then the doors would lock and we
Yeah.
weren't quite sure. We better not move because we're going to set the alarm off.
Yeah, it's all very stressful.
The other thing that this car has over the original car we rented last year is it has an actual handbrake, which I'm going to let off and we're going to start rolling. Which means that you still have much more control over what the car is actually doing.
Yes,
also,
definitely.
it still has the hill holder, because that was one of the things we mentioned in the original
Yeah,
video.
that's really interesting that it has a hill holder with a manual, but I know that it does exist.
Yeah.
It just feels a bit weird, a manual handbrake, I mean.
Yeah, and the third thing we like about it is the infotainment is a little more basic. Last year, this one was wireless.
Oh, with the CarPlay.
And
Android
it
Auto,
was
yeah.
a pain in the ass depending on who wanted to connect to it, because
Yeah.
the car would decide who would connect to it rather than you. Whereas this year, you just plug it in. You want to charge it anyway if you're going to be playing music. The person who plugs in is the person who has control of the CarPlay.
Usually him. The new Dacia badging is much less fussy than the old one.
Interestingly, this is actually an LPG model, and we really wanted to try it on LPG, but we couldn't find anywhere on the island local to us that actually sells LPG for vehicles.
Although we do love the Jogger, it does still have a few annoying features, and one of them is in the back. It's got big wide doors, huge, theoretically loads and loads of space, but this is the 5-seat model, remember. They have still mounted the rear seats in the same place as if it was for the 7 seats, which means that rear legroom is actually really quite tight. And you then have a huge boot that's overly huge with a really weird little dip down just behind the back seat, so everything in the boot falls behind that. I would really love it if they would put a sliding back seat in this car. It would actually make such a difference and make it such a more usable, practical car, because most of the time you're likely to be carrying more passengers than you are luggage. The other thing with the 5-seater model is that the boot is actually a little bit bigger than the 7-seater because it doesn't have all the kind of oddment storage that the 7-seater had. You also, on this model, because it's an LPG, you don't get a spare tyre because the tank is under the boot floor. You also don't get my favourite little feature, which is the pop-out rear windows. They've been deleted on the 5-seat model.
How does it drive? Well, oh, turbo's kicked in. Oh, feel the VTEC that it doesn't have. That's the thing. I mean, I can understand why other reviewers have not criticised the performance. It is really nippy for a vehicle this size with such a small engine, but it just feels like you're thrashing it. But at the same time, it doesn't feel as fun as thrashing something small and Italian, because they have a much more sing-song voice when it comes to this sort of thing. But it's a cheap car. It's fun. You can go and have adventures in it. It's something that you can take anywhere, like Lanzarote or Lisbon or anywhere. Oh gosh, I've just descended into like a Beautiful South song, haven't we? Much like last year's version, we don't really have anything to criticize about the handling, the steering, the ride. It does everything fairly competently. And you know, no modern car with electric power steering has this fantastic sense of feel from it. It just does what it does. It's perfectly capable, and no one is going to buy this thing because it's a sports car. Same again with the gear change. It changes gear. It does what you need it to do. There's 6 of them. You can pick one and it'll make you go forward, and there's a 7th that makes you go backwards.
So I think our conclusion of the 2024 model year Dacia is that base model brilliance is best, because none of the fussy electronics that was in the last year's top of the range model we miss, and in fact we prefer them not being here, and it really shows the purity of the Dacia Jogger at its best, frankly.
Yes, because it really means that this car just does what you need it to do. You have a key, you get in and you drive.
With lots of space for passengers and even more space for luggage.
This is the Ron seal of cars. It does what it says on the tin.
Well, that's it. Thank you very much indeed for watching our little update video on the Dacia Jogger here in beautiful Lanzarote.
And catch us next year when we test the 2026 version when we're back.
Yay!
Bye!
Bye!